Hey friends, how are you? Welcome back to the Matt Greer Music Channel. So today I want to talk about budget-friendly samplers. This is going to be really similar in format to the budget-friendly FM synth video I did a while back. I'll put a link to that up here in the top. All right, a few ground rules. We're not going to be talking about the 1992 Yamaha sampler that you found for 20 bucks at a yard sale. We're not going to be talking about the MPC 500 that you bought on Mercari and saved a bunch of money on. These are new samplers that you can buy from stores right now. Secondly, I'm going to stay away from sample sequencers. So things like the Electron model samples that you can load samples, but you can't actually record audio into it, or the Volca sample. We're gonna stay away from things like that. And I'm also gonna stay away from like groove boxes that do synthesis and a bunch of other things and also sample. I'm gonna stick to samplers that do all of their sound generation from actually recording audio to the device. So with that being said, let's get into the three that we're going to talk about. All right, number one, I'm going to talk about this guy. This is the Circuit Rhythm. This came out, I don't know, a year or two ago. They've done some really nice updates to it, and it still continues to be a pretty decent seller, I think, for Novation. I really like this sampler. I did a whole project on it. I did a whole Beattape. If you can call it that. It's all digital, but I put that on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description, but basically I did a whole project using this sampler. So I really got into the workflow, found it to be very creative and inspiring. So we're gonna talk about this guy. I'll put retail prices that I can find on the screen after the fact, but yeah. So we'll talk about this first, the Circuit Rhythm. All right, next one I'm gonna talk about is the PO33KO. By Teenage Engineering. I absolutely love this sampler. It was really the first sampler that I got that I really connected with, and it kind of became a gateway drug for me to get into a bunch of different samplers. This too I've done several projects on, so I do mean it when I find it inspiring. I've got a bunch of videos making jams with this thing. I've got 2 albums out that you can check out that I made on this as well. So we're gonna get into this one. And then finally, we're gonna talk about the Low 512. This is the newest of the bunch for me, and I think it's the, well, yeah, it's the newest product that we'll be talking about in general. Again, classic style sampler, takes sound in, you can sequence it, you can play it, you can make beats with it. We're gonna talk about this guy and compare it against the others as well. All right, let's first talk about the Novation Circuit Rhythm. Now, a little background for me, I didn't really have much interest in this when it first came out. I had the original circuit. I sold it years ago. I kind of have moved on, but I came across it at a very reasonable price, so I thought, let's give it a try. I like samplers. Let's see what they got. And I'm glad I did, because I've actually come to really appreciate this sampler. There are a lot of videos on my channel already about a review of this, tutorials, various things, so I encourage you to check out my playlists if you want a deeper dive. For that purpose, I'm not going to do an overview of how to use it. I'm just going to talk about what I like about it. So some real pluses I think for this one are it's got an internal battery that charges over USB-C, which I just think is fantastic. I love not having to feed this thing AA batteries all the time. I love being able to just charge it off of like a phone charger. I think that's awesome. Some other things that I think this one really has going for it, especially in comparison to maybe the others, is it's got 8 tracks. And so you can have 8 tracks of audio going simultaneously. And in a way you can kind of have more than 8 tracks, because on each track you can do what they refer to as sample flip. So on one step of the sequence I can have a kick, on another step of the sequence I can have a snare, and the alternate steps I can have hi-hat. So you could actually have a lot more than just 8 sounds playing during a sequence. Now you can only have 8 voices at once, it's 8 voice polyphony, but you can have more than that number of sounds in a pattern, which I think is great. A couple other cool things it's got going is it's got it's got effects and performance effects, which is really nice. So if you go in here into the mixer and grid effects, these are all performance effects like vinyl simulator, glitchy things, repeats, stutters. I think there's like a phaser on there and a few others. They've actually released some more effects that you can load onto this via firmware updates. So I like that about it. I like the filters on it. I like the distortion. All of those things are excellent on here, and you can use pretty long sample time on this one. So a lot of things going for it at a pretty modest price. Now this is the highest priced of all three of them, but it's not a massive jump over the other options. So that's why I feel pretty comfortable in including it in the budget-friendly realm of things. And again, I did say I was going to pick things that are sold new in stores, but you can find these secondhand for very friendly prices as well. A few cons that I wish were a little bit different. I wish that the at least one or two of the voices could be played polyphonically. None of them can. There are workarounds, like if you put the same sample on 4 different channels and played chords into the sequencer, like if channel 1 was your bass note, and then channel 2 was you know, your variation, and then maybe channel 3 is like the 5th, and you sequence that into a chord, you could resample that and then turn that into a new sample, but still not the same as polyphony. So that's one detractor that I do see on this. I also wish at least 1 or 2 of the sample channels were stereo. They're all monophonic. Now you do get stereo effects and a lot of nice things to kind of make that sound bigger than they are, but I wish that at least a couple of them were stereo. Other than that though, I've been really pleased with this, and like I mentioned, I did a whole project on that. I'll put it in the description so you can check that out if you want to see it. All right, that's number 1. All right, up next we've got the trusty, sometimes rusty PO33KO. I really like this sampler. I've had it for a long time. Actually now I own a couple of these. I also own the Street Fighter themed one as well. Had to put that in the Game Boy style case, of course. But really like this one. This is by far and away the most budget-friendly hardware sampler I think ever, at least at new prices. The only other options that you might have that are cheaper are apps for your phone or iPad. But if you want a hardware example, I think these are $89. They may have raised the price a little bit, but very budget friendly. It's also so dang cute, man. It's tiny. This thing will fit in your pocket. I guess, well, it's a pocket operator, isn't it? So portability was sort of in mind. It also has some pretty interesting features, especially for the size and cost. It has a filter that you can apply to your samplers, and that can be either a low pass or a high pass filter. And it has the ability to play samples chromatically, so you can do scales and things. You can pitch things, so if you have a high pitch sample, you want it to be a bass, you can do that. Pitch it down, put some low pass filter, easy to make basses, and it's quite playable and intuitive and easy to use. There's not a whole lot going on, so you can wrap your head around the operations of this one quite easily. It's got performance effects. You can do parameter locking to the sequencer. It's pretty amazing all that they packed in here. It also has a drum chop feature that if you sample into the drum banks, it will look for the transients in a wave of drums, so it'll kind of try to separate your kick, your hi-hat, your snare, so that it makes it very easy. It'll also work on melodic content, but again, you want something with sharp transients. I've found that voices work pretty well, but things like chords on a Rhodes piano, it's not really going to do that pretty well, and you'd probably want to save that for your instrument banks anyway. A few drawbacks, you know, it is my 4-voice polyphony, so that's not a lot. Although I've been able to make pretty comprehensive music on this thing, so there's tricks around that if you know what you're doing. If you get good samples, you can make it sound a lot bigger than it actually is. It's also like, it's really lo-fi, I mean, but that might be part of the charm. I think it is. I kind of like the crusty digital aliasing you get on this one when you're sampling with it. But it could be a drawback from some. The biggest drawback probably is the amount of sampling time available. It's 40 seconds globally. That's not per pattern or anything like that. So 40 seconds is all the sampling time that you get with this. It doesn't matter if you try to change bitrate. You can't change bitrate, but there's no tricks to get around that. So I've found that pretty much I'm getting between the 16 pattern slots and the 40 seconds of sample time, I'm getting one beat on this thing, one track I should say, one composition, and then I'm having to clear it all off, back it up, and start over to do a second beat. To me, there's just not really enough room to do more than one track on here without having to kind of nuke the data that's on it. But aside from that, I think it's hella fun. I think it's super good value, and it's been an excellent little sampler. I don't see myself ever giving rid of these, because it's just too much fun. All right, and last but certainly not least, we have the Liven Lo-Fi 12. Now this is the newest one in my studio. I've had the least amount of time with it, but I have really enjoyed using this sampler. So some of the key features here, it does sample in multiple bit rates, either 24 kilohertz or 12 kilohertz, and depending on which selection you make, you can sample either 2 seconds per bank or 4 seconds per bank. Not a lot, but globally you have 128 slots for samples, so that times 4 seconds is how much sample time it potentially could have. So there's enough there to make numerous projects, and I really haven't had an issue with the sampling time, other than knowing that I can't sample real long phrases. But that's not really what this is about. Let's see, it has some excellent effects on it. You can have different effects per channel, and let me show you some of them. There's chorus, flange, delay. This is a bit crush, distortion, low pass filter, high pass filter, isolator, tilt. This is like a tilt EQ. You can select a band in the EQ spectrum and boost or reduce that. Very helpful. Tremolo, compressor, and then you've got things in the reverb effects. This is a send effect that you can decide how much of each track you want to send. Hall, room, arena, plate, tunnel, infinity, tape. Tape is actually not a reverb, it's like a tape effect. It adds hiss and saturation. Vinyl, similar kind of effect, does sort of the same job. This is like remix. This is like a performance effect. And yeah, that's it. So a couple things that I do like about this one that may differentiate it from, say, Pocket Operator is you can sample things, you can play them chromatically, and you can play chords. So that among the three is unique. If I choose one voice, I can play actual chords with that sample, which is really, really nice. It also has a drum chop and sample chop feature. So that's a new update that they added after the fact, which is great. I'm really happy that they continue to add features to this product via firmware updates. Really awesome. It's got quite a bit of sound shaping abilities here. You've got multiple filters per track, including low pass, high pass, band pass, and different models of each of those. So quite a lot of filters. There's LFO that you can apply to the pitch and the filter. You can adjust the sweep and range of that LFO. You can also adjust the envelope generator and mess with the time and depth. You can reverse samples. You can make them loops, so you can take like a waveform and turn that into basically a synth. And so that's really nice as well. Yeah, so quite a bit of sample shaping. Not like an Octatrack or anything like that. I mean, it's not, you know, this is this is lo-fi and budget, but it's plenty enough to get the sound dialed in that you might want. The other biggest attraction for me to this machine is the sequencer itself. It's a very powerful, very electron-like sequencer with parameter locking, quite a bit of tweakability. It's kind of modeled to be at 4 bars standard, but you can reduce the play speed. So let me show you here. So if I put the length at 64 and I adjust the notes, I can make 1 step on the sequencer be a whole bar. Now that particular extreme I've never found a use for, but if you take it from, you know, 1/16 to 1/8, now all of a sudden you basically have 8 bars to sequence with. Great for drum and bass and things that you need longer phrases for that are maybe faster. Anyway, excellent sequencer. It would take me a long time to show you every possible tweak that you can make with the sequencer, but it's quite robust, and that's one of the things I love about it. A few things that might be detractors for you. It does take AA batteries. Now I'm running it with power cord here, so you don't have to use batteries, but I've noticed that it eats them pretty fast. If you do want to use batteries, they don't last a whole long time. This, for example, will last a lot longer, or the Novation circuit tracks I've noticed has a longer battery life. But it's nice to have that option to sit on the couch without a power cord and just, you know, your headphones. You know, it's plasticky, but again, you got to consider the cost and everything that you're getting for that amount of money. I think it's an excellent value. Honestly, that's really it from detractors. I mean, I wish it had more sample time. I wish it had more features and this and that, but it really never promised any of those things. So, you know, got to keep my expectations in check. One thing I'll mention about these two, they both have external speakers. That might be important to you personally. I could not care less. I can't think of a single instance where I would rather listen to my beat through a speaker than the headphones. Even if I'm showing somebody, if my wife wants to hear what I'm working on, I'm handing her the cans so she can put those on her head and hear it proper. These little speakers, I just don't get the point. One thing about the Novation, the old circuit had a speaker. I don't think I ever once used it. This one doesn't. It sacrificed that for a thinner, lighter profile, and you know, I'm happy they did that. I think that was the right call. All right, so that's pretty much it. Again, not real scientific here. I just wanted to compare these three, talk about what I like about them, so that if you're considering a budget-friendly sampler, you might be interested in checking one of these out. Let me know if you have questions in the comments. I do urge you to check out the links in the description if you want to hear examples of these projects I've made with them, that kind of stuff. Please do that. The music in the background, I'll go ahead and mention, is stuff that I've made with these samplers as well. So everything you've been hearing has been made on at least one of these. All right, guys, thanks for watching. See you later. Bye.